Welcome to Law, Life, and Liberty with Anthony Puopolo.
Welcome to Law, Life, and Liberty with Anthony Puopolo. Anthony is a Massachusetts attorney who helps families navigate divorce, custody disputes, and criminal charges that often overlap. With offices in Lowell and North Andover, he's represented clients across Middlesex, Essex, and Suffolk counties in family and criminal courts. I'm Lisa Mosby, your host, and today we're talking about what to do after OUI arrest in Massachusetts. Anthony will explain what happens next, how fast you need to act, and what to expect as your case moves forward. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Before we get into the details, how common are OUI cases in your practice, and what kinds of situations usually lead people to call you?
I would say about 50 to 60% of my criminal practice involves operating under the influence charges. It's it's more common than people think. I mean, if you've ever had one or two drinks at dinner, odds are you are probably over the legal limit and don't actually physically feel like you are. And my more often than not OUIs are people who are just in that situation. I had one recently where the woman came to me because she had gone out with a longtime friend. She had one very large margarita. She thought she was fine, and it was just unfortunate that she was just slightly not. And those are the ones that wind up finding their way to my office, is more often than not the ones who are just over the limit. This was a one-time mistake, hopefully for many of them, and they've just recently been arrested and they need someone to help them navigate the process. And that leads them to me.
When someone's arrested for OUI in Massachusetts, what are the very first things that happen once they're brought to the station?
When you're brought to the station, you're going to go through what's called the booking process, which is a formal process where the police are going to gather information. You're going to be fingerprinted. They'll take your mugshot. You'll be read your Miranda rights, which is your right to an attorney and your right to remain silent. They should emphasize that to you. There's also a form that they're going to have you sign that says that you've been read your Miranda rights. And they're also going to have you sign what's called the statutory rights and consent form, which deals with the breathalyzer that many people are familiar with. A lot of people think that, I took a breathalyzer on the street while I was doing testing, and that's what really ultimately charges me. It's not. You'll actually be required to do a more formal breath test at the station, which is the breath test that is admissible in your criminal case or not, depending on a variety of factors. You should absolutely remain silent during this process. The only thing you should really do is answer the biographical data, your name, your date of birth, things like that. But do not talk about anything that happened during that event.
Of course, yeah. Many people think refusing the breath test automatically helps their case. What happens under Massachusetts law when someone refuses versus when they take it?
Well, I will tell you, it does automatically help your case, but it doesn't help your privilege to drive a car. So when you are getting an operating under the influence charge, you're actually dealing with two different statutes. You've got the statute that says that it is unlawful in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to operate a vehicle under the influence of intoxicating liquor. You also have another statute that says by virtue of being granted the privilege of driving on the roads in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you impliedly consent to submitting to a chemical test on demand. So if you refuse, you help the eventual prosecution of your OUI, because it can be very difficult to beat a breathalyzer. Not impossible, but difficult. It's easier for your case if there is not a black and white number to fight. But you automatically, by virtue of refusing a breathalyzer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for your first time, you automatically lose your license to operate for 6 months.
That's substantial.
It
What
is,
are
and
the
it only
short
gets worse.
Yeah, what are the short-term consequences most people don't expect, like the license suspension or court dates or how soon they actually take effect?
I think a lot of people don't realize that generally your license to operate a vehicle is suspended instantaneously. You can't leave the police station driving a vehicle. You will have to be picked up. Someone will have to get your car. Your license is immediately suspended. They don't expect the 6 months. If they've refused, they don't expect the letter that will be forthcoming within about 4 or 5 days after the refusal from the RMV saying that their license is suspended for a refusal. They also don't realize that the average criminal matter in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts can last, 6 to 8 months, depending on how long it takes to get discovery from the Commonwealth. The process is broken up into multiple different sections, so it's people don't realize. I try to tell people very often that Law and Order gives people a very skewed view of the criminal justice system. People think I get arrested and I'm on trial tomorrow. Everyone's ready to go. So I think the length of time that they're going to be involved in this process is something that generally really shocks people on the first day after they've been arrested.
When you're defending an OUI case, what kinds of evidence or procedural mistakes can really change the outcome?
Procedural mistake is a really important one. So let's say you do consent to the breathalyzer. There are regulations in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts about how the officer has to administer those breathalyzers. You have to be observed for no less than 15 minutes. And that does not mean 14 minutes and 59 seconds. It is 15 minutes to make sure that you do not burp, hiccup, that there is no gastrointestinal reaction that could force alcohol particles out of your stomach into your esophagus, because that will throw off the machine. If they do not properly do that, then that breath test is subject to being thrown out by a judge, which can absolutely impact the direction of your case. If you refused to comply with field sobriety tests, which are, people are familiar with, you're asked to step out of the vehicle, you're asked to walk a straight line, say the alphabet backwards. Those are what we call field sobriety tests. If you refused to cooperate, if you said, don't even tell me about these tests, I don't want to hear anything about it, you're presumably going to get arrested, but that lack of testing helps your case in the long run.
If a person already has a family court matter, like a custody case, how can an OUI charge affect that situation?
That is a great question. It largely depends on the underlying divorce. So I would say I had a divorce once where the allegations on both sides were that both parties had a significant alcohol problem. During that case, my client got an operating under the influence charge. That only serves to bolster the allegations on the other side about a substance use problem. So if there are allegations in your divorce that you have a substance use problem, you can expect that it is likely that the other side is going to use that to their advantage. In general, though, it's not going to have a massive impact. If you get an OUI with your children in the car, that's going to be a major problem. If you get an OUI outside of your parenting time, there's no history of substance use, the other side may bring a motion to terminate your parenting time and argue that they're concerned that you might do it with the children in the car. But absent a history, it's unlikely that the judge may just order, at least, as a first step, that you not consume alcohol, the day before or during your parenting time. So it will largely depend on whether or not there's a history of abuse of a substance that has already been pled in the divorce, and that will determine whether or not it impacts your divorce.
Completely makes sense. For anyone who's just been charged and is scared about what comes next, what's the best thing they can do in the first 24 hours to protect their license, their case, and their future?
Immediately call an attorney. Don't assume that this is a very technical area of law. The breathalyzer itself was highly litigated in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. During the years 2011 through 2019, the Supreme Judicial Court actually ruled that the breathalyzer test machines weren't properly calibrated and therefore any of the breathalyzers used during that 8-year period were thrown out. And that was from a lot of lawyers getting together and saying, this is not being done properly. So it is very important to contact an attorney who knows what they're doing. As far as protecting your license, if, let's say, you refuse the breathalyzer and there was a valid reason, it wasn't a refusal. So, for instance, I had a client once who had a lung condition. He didn't refuse, he just couldn't produce enough air. Because he couldn't produce enough air, the police put it down as a refusal. You only have 10 days to file an appeal with the RMV to protect your license if they put you down as a refusal that you think was inappropriate. So you need to get in touch with a lawyer right away, especially in a case like that, so you can explain to the lawyer, I didn't refuse, I have a medical condition, I can document it, and then we've got to get you down to the RMV right away to file that appeal timely, because once that 10 days is up, you're out of, you presumptively are going to be out of luck. So I would say the number one answer is call a lawyer as soon as humanly possible.
Thank you. Thank you for all the answers today. That's it for today's episode on Law, Life, and Liberty with Anthony Puopolo. To learn more about Anthony and his work across Massachusetts family and criminal courts, visit agplawoffices.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to leave a review and subscribe to the show. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.